Randomness and Nothing listeners, this is Rashad Woods. I always promise you all interesting guests, opportunities to learn things different and talk to people from all different walks of life. And no one encompasses this. He's a former Marine. He's a CEO. He's an entrepreneur and now runs his own e-learning system that has helped companies globally, US based as well too, from the Middle East to Europe. Mr. Christopher Dundee, thank you so much.
Rashad, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, sir. So I've got to be honest with you. Your background has spanned I don't run across backgrounds like this very often. So can you give us some background from your military career to your entrepreneurial career to what you're doing right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I spent 12 years in the Marines. I was 7 years enlisted and 5 years as an officer. And when I got out, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went back overseas and spent another almost 12 and a half years overseas teaching English teaching English initially in Korea. And probably 4.5 years into that, I discovered this piece of software, which at that time was really fairly new, called the learning management system. I'd never heard of one before. And they were using it in the school where I was working. And essentially what a learning management system is, for those of your listeners who may not know, if you walked into a company, any company, for example, a lot of times HR is going to put you down in front of a computer and you're going to go through some kind of maybe sexual harassment training or maybe some kind of OSHA training for safety purposes, something like that. So the learning management system is not the training, it's the software that the training sits on.
Right.
And so what the learning management system allowed us to do at that time, and these are now in pretty much every school in the United States, I think, it allows teachers to be able to put content online that the students can then access from anywhere, from at home. If they're on their way to school, for example, and they've got a Wi-Fi connection, they can access this content. And this was a game changer for teachers. And at that point, I fell in love. This was about 2007 or so, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've worked with learning management systems and organizations in Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, here in the States for the federal government. I was the LMS administrator for the Peace Corps. And it's a wonderful platform. It's amazing. It's so versatile. And if you've got a learning management system, it's there forever and your users can access it whenever it's convenient for them. So
that's awesome. When you talk about, a lot of times when people think of training, kind of, get that sort of, they roll their eyes a bit, so to speak, right? They're like, oh, great. Let me just finish this module and let me get this over with so I can get the little click button that says completed. And then that's all she wrote. So how do you get people past that phase to actual engagement and actual learning?
So first of all, I see that there is a progression that every organization goes through when they first start with e-learning, and you can't skip steps in the progression. You can make shorter periods of time, shorter intervals for each of the steps, but you can't skip them. And one of those is the kind of, click-through training that you have just described. So, I put my video or my presentation online, and the users just have to watch it, and there's no interaction. It's just passive absorption of information. And that is absolutely the worst way for an adult to learn. Can't do it. And it's terrible, but that stage is always there. So the next step is we learn this. Malcolm Knowles is a very famous writer in educational circles, and he talks about the principles of andragogy. And normally when we talk about learning, we say pedagogy, but pedagogy is actually the wrong word. That's the teaching of children. Andragogy is the teaching of adults.
Oh, wow.
And adults learn very differently. So one of the things that's absolutely critical for an adult is that there has to be a reason presented to them right away from the beginning that tells them why they're doing what they're doing and how it's going to have an immediate impact on their life or their job. And if you don't have that, if they don't see an immediate connection, then instantly you've lost your buy-in. That's the first element. The second element is that it has to be some kind of a problem or puzzle or scenario that the user's actively engaging their brain with in order to come up with a solution. And maybe that puzzle or scenario involves just a word question. We do this a lot of times in fact, I just did it recently for a client who runs an aviation training company. The situation is you are at 25,000 feet and this indicator light goes on. What are the 4 possible causes of that indicator light? And so even just that little change causes the user to put themselves mentally into a different situation.
Right.
That then engages, different senses, and that will add to some of the ability for them to absorb that material without just kind of clicking out of it.
Because it gives them interaction with their actual profession.
It does. And it allows them to actually put themselves in a situation where they have to think, what would I do? Rather than just having somebody tell them, Bob is at 25,000 feet and he sees the indicator light. These are the 4 things that he can, that might have caused that.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to engage with that material at all. So you're absolutely correct. And it's painful to go through that training. And I've been there many times.
Those things are fun, wink, wink, so to speak. So what's it like when you have to implement these learning management systems across different cultures? Because you've had a chance to do this in so many different places. What's the differences in how people are taught learning and absorb information, or even legally what you can do in different countries?
Those are great questions. Here's a great example of this. What you and I would normally consider to be cheating in an academic environment here in the United States, where one person is looking at somebody else's paper or learning management system, and they're looking at questions and they're going copying answers and that kind of thing, has a very different connotation when you're in Saudi Arabia, for example.
Oh, wow.
In Saudi Arabia, that sort of, and I use this in air quotes, group work is a very common thing that you encounter. And as a Western instructor for the first time, that looks something. Oh wait, no, eyes on your own paper, eyes on your own computer, whatever. But you have to understand that is not. There's no stigma associated with that in the way that we have it.
Right.
And so from that perspective, when you adapt that perspective, now you have to start designing your learning so that it will cater to that kind of a user. So you have to start making group projects. You have to start making things where users are interacting.
Right.
It's a little bit of a different mindset.
That's amazing.
And it's different. Yeah, and it's different if you go to East Asia, for example, because in a country, a very Confucian society like Korea, the teacher is on a pedestal, and when the teacher speaks, there's a definite senior subordinate relationship there, and the users will sit in the rows and do exactly what they're told, and so that has an entirely different set of parameters in which you're using to design your training. So a lot of fun, great experiences. I loved every minute I spent overseas.
That's amazing, right? Because to customize across seas. I mean, and it's like you're launching a product, but before you can even launch a product, you have to be like, let me understand, even what department I need to talk to. You have people who speak English very well. I'm sure. Did your deployment overseas by any chance help you kind of get a leg up of different situations that you would encounter prior to somebody who would just be, hey, I need you to deploy the software over here with no familiar world backgrounds?
It did, actually. So we did some deployments to Korea, and when I was in the Marine Corps. So I was going back there as a civilian instructor, and that was, so having that prior familiarity definitely assisted me there. And that was my first experience overseas as a teacher. So once I kind of, had the jitters out of the way, it was easy enough going to other cultures. But yes, that was it. I worked in Korea. I worked in the Korean Army's Military Intelligence School as an instructor, and that was a lot of fun because I got to combine we were teaching their officer staff NCOs, their special forces guys, and their Secret Service. The Korean Secret Service actually goes to that school as well. So it's really cool to see all of these professionals.
I've seen some of their training videos. Like, I'm a martial artist, right? So I always try to just segue. I have a black belt in Tung Soo Do, I have a brown belt in Taekwondo. And the skill set that you've seen from those guys, you're just like, oh, the knives that they're taking, and you're like, this is unbelievable. I watch those videos, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They're incredible.
I don't know if you do this in your martial arts training. I've never seen it before, but when we were over there, the Korean Marines their Taekwondo team did a demonstration for us, and they were breaking cement blocks with their foreheads. I mean, it was absolutely insane.
I saw some of those videos, man.
50, they're just smacking that thing. First of all, I don't have the skill or the strength to do that, but I don't think I have the mental ability to just sit down and say, I'm going to try this.
That's not happening. Yeah, man, that's a different level of beast. It definitely puts you in a little bit different place of where your skill set lies versus theirs, right? So it's like, hey, that's awesome. That's
North Koreans come across the border. I'd be careful.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a rough one because I've seen documentaries about one. That's a rough one. Um,
Mm.
so your company Flagship LMS. So what I've noticed is that one of your guys' hallmarks of your company was that you say it's much better to outsource this than insource this for companies. And you've seen the failures, I'm sure, from companies that did. And then they've reached out to your company and said, this was a complete disaster for us. Please go ahead. So what are the downfalls of a company trying to do it themselves?
Well, so let's right off the bat, it's a fiscal question. If you're going to hire a learning management system administrator, one person who's going to be on the front end managing that system for you, you're going to be looking at $55,000, $60,000 a year for that person, plus their benefits.
Right.
Now, for that same price, and actually we're a little bit cheaper than that, for that same price, we'll actually monitor all your servers, host
Wow.
all of your site. We will provide you with the learning management system administrator and all the course builders. Typically, an LMS administrator does not build courses. Typically, they only manage the platform. So you would also have to have an instructional designer, which is another $55,000, $60,000. That instructional designer is one person who has the capacity of one person. So they're able to put out maybe a course a week. If they're really good and the courses are short, maybe 2 courses a week. But if you come to somebody like us, we have a whole stable full of course designers who can do nothing but produce courses for your organization. And so we've produced well over 1,000 right now for our clients, and
Beautiful.
we can do 10, 12 a month for clients. So, we
Wonderful.
can get out a lot more of your training a lot more quickly. Now, you still need to provide us with your subject matter experts. We're not going to be pretending to invent your material, but we can absolutely talk with them and use that material or the resources they provide to put those into good quality learning management system. And then the last thing is that you have to go through all of the growing pains that any organization would go through in order to learn what's effective e-learning and what's not. We've already been through that years ago. And so we can take you from zero to a really, really successful, productive, and a high ROI course right away, immediately. And so it doesn't make sense for you to spend all the money to hire somebody internally and then teach them when you can hire us and we can outsource everything to you, and you can just concentrate on your core specialty, whatever that is for your organization.
Well, I have to imagine too that having that in the hands of one person of that sensitive material is not also a very good thing, right? Because ultimately, having one person in charge of your entire e-learning, if there's disgruntled employee for any reason or some sort of litigation that can get involved, there's one person in charge of your entire learning system of your entire company. And we've heard horror stories about.
So yes, it's never good to have a single source, a single choke point, but there are things that you can do to mitigate those types of situations, and routine backups of your training and your site, and having those stored somewhere, that can take care of some of those problems. But you're absolutely right. If that person goes on vacation, and they're going to need to go on vacation at some point, what are you going to do? And you've got to train somebody else, and that somebody else has probably got already their own job, so they're adding this onto their plate, and those sorts of things just don't make for really productive or happy employees. And these are secondary skill sets for most organizations. So we encourage you, don't focus on your secondary skill set. Focus on your primary skill set, your primary product, your service, whatever it is. Leave everything else to us. We can handle it.
Now, do the e-learning systems, so you've helped thousands of customers. Like, I got a chance to really look at some of the testimonials, got a chance to look at your software. It's a very impressive platform. And I saw on the back-end user as well, too, that, oftentimes I think they said that, people can have a tendency to have too many questions that are answered about a particular module. So how do you customize that per industry? And this is a broad-based question, more or less, not really specific because every company is different, but kind of two stools to it. Do larger companies typically have more robust, or does that matter when it comes to whether small, medium, or mid-sized businesses, large businesses?
That's a great question, Rashad. So the first thing, the thing that determines how good your training package is going to be, first and foremost, is going to be how engaged is your C-suite. If your C-suite has basically delegated this to the middle management and said, just put together some training, you're not going to have a particularly robust platform, and you're not going to have a great set of training. But if the C-suite recognizes that the e-learning, that the training department is a revenue generator rather than a cost center, and they take an active interest in what is on that platform, then you're going to have a system that's going to be addressing the training needs, not just of those entry-level grunt employees in the first 2 years of their time with your organization, but it's also going to be meeting the needs of those middle managers who are looking to grow and potentially become senior leaders in your organization. And it's also going to provide some training for the senior leaders as well. Too many times I see the only training available on the learning management platform is going to be for the sales guys, the HR guys, the bookkeepers, those kinds of things. But you don't have things that are going to make your senior leadership efficient. And that training is out there, and you can certainly develop it, but it's not there. And the problem is, when you don't have that, there's a disconnect between what the employees are seeing that they're required to do and what leadership considers to be important. And when the whole is not the same for everybody, then people are kind of like, well, we'll just click the button and get through this. Obviously, it's not a big deal for them because they're not going to take any.
I've always asked this, particularly now in the era of chat GTP and automation, right? So everybody's a subject matter expert. You can always get the answer as quick as possible. Suddenly I'm a nuclear physicist, right? Like, I'm the smartest guy in the world all of a sudden hosting a podcast, right? So I asked, like, how do you, obviously yours company is very successful, but for people who can just Google it or just get the immediate answer, how do you make sure that they're not cheating themselves or the organization they're with, because now everybody can build, can be on the Manhattan Project just by watching Oppenheimer, so to speak?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I've seen this actually. There was an organization, a tax company, I won't mention their name, but they're the people that would prepare your taxes, in April. And so they hire a lot of short-term contractors who have to pass a proficiency test in order to be able to do this for their clients. And what the contractors would do is they actually had somebody go through the entire test, screenshot it, and they set up a separate website with all the answers for it so that they could. And yeah, and it's so obviously, this is a problem. If these people are in charge of preparing your taxes, we would like them to be proficient as possible. So one of the ways around that is we create a question bank that will have 100 variations of each question. And the beautiful part about ChatGPT, because you brought this up, is I can take the 10-question summative assessment, which is the final exam in a particular course, whatever that happens to be, 50 questions, doesn't make a difference. I can put those into ChatGPT and say, give me 10 variations or 100 variations of each question. Once I have that, I can put that into a question bank on the learning management system, and now the assessment will be different for every single person, because it'll have the same types of questions, but the numbers are different, or the parameters are slightly different. And so that is a wonderful way of ensuring that your material is taught, but it also mitigates some of the potential issues with cheating. It's not gonna solve your problem. Ultimately, your employees are either trustworthy or they're not, and if they're not, get rid of them. But it'll go a long way toward eliminating some of that temptation.
Yeah, because here I am out of college, and I'm like, I can only imagine what professors have to be dealing with right now when it comes to, dealing with. The internet was around when I was in college, right? What?
Yeah, I talk with them on a daily basis, and it's exactly what you think it's like when they have a written assignment turned in. You can almost now there are times, if you're smart, you can get away with this a little bit, but there are people who will just blatantly pick something off of ChatGPT, put it in, and won't even look at it. And,
it won't write it out that this is
ridiculous.
Insert name, and it still has the insert name field in there.
But there's an interesting study done, and this is a really important piece of information for instructors like that. There was a study done where they had the students signed a pop-up box that said, "I certify that this is all my own work." And when they did that before the assignment, submitting the assignment, and they did it after submitting the assignment, it actually cut down on the cheating. And the reason it did that was because the people were reminded, it was brought up foremost in their minds that this was an honor issue. And the difference in percentages between the people who got the pop-up and the people who did not get the pop-up was statistically significant.
Wow.
It wasn't going to solve 100% of the problem, but it also reminds those people who are generally good people that, you just need to remember that you're trying your best to do the work yourself.
Of course. That's amazing. And it's funny because, they have to, at some point, there have to be some sort of guardrails against that, because I'm sure, and if you're an astute professor and all of a sudden, every paper looks exactly the same. It's high, it's annotated exactly the same. You can kind of start putting two and two together. I mean, these are smart people that obviously do this.
Well, you can, and this is where we can kind of come in and help out, because one of the things that we have quickly developed here is the assessment. The final assessment in any course can't be a single function. It can't be a multiple choice test, or it can't be an essay, or it has to be in several modalities.
Yeah.
It requires more effort from the company. But if you have multiple modalities, it becomes more difficult for somebody to synthesize their answers across all three. Instead, they have to actually put some thought into what it is that they're doing. The other way to do it too is if you're having them build their knowledge in increments, rather than having one big summative assessment. If you're building a lot of smaller assessments along the way that are lower stakes, there's less inclination for people to cheat. If it's one big final exam and I got to pass this, then the impetus to cheat's a little bit larger there. But if it's just a small couple of points here, a couple of points there, let's just go ahead and take it.
I was finding it funny. Remember when I was a kid one time, and they showed like a math book from the United States versus was like either Japan or South Korea, and our math book is like this thick, and then your chapter 1 by September, your chapter 10 by October, and they said that the math book over in Japan or South Korea was a quarter. It was thinner. So they just kept repeating the same exact. So they said, we're going to just, we're not going to put you on chapter 10 in 30 days. We're going to keep you on chapter 1 for 4 to 6 months. So that way you've mastered this one particular thing. Is that kind of the mentality that has helped, people retain information when they're not basically given 200 chapters to memorize by December?
No, you are 100% correct with that. We call it the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, the scientist who put it together essentially said that, and this has been well documented in lots of studies. After that point, what happens is after 24 hours, the individual who took that course is going to retain about 80% of that information. But if they don't revisit that, if they don't go back to that information over a period of a week, they're going to be losing, about half of it. And over a period of a month, if they don't revisit it, it's as if they didn't take the course at all. Right. And so you're exactly right. We call that recursive training. And the purpose of that is to make sure that when you teach a concept, you can move on a little bit, but you got to come back and visit that concept again, and you got to keep doing it over and over and over again, particularly foundational material,
right?
Because that's going to be very important for everything else that goes on. Yes, and so if you are on chapter 1 in February and chapter 10 at the end of the semester, it becomes really, really difficult for you to retain 100% of that information. So I do agree that a lot more time on a lot less material.
So the important question is the company. This obviously is the ROI. What obviously you have proprietary information, your clients have proprietary information, but do they see what's the ROI of a company when they actually follow these principles and these steps?
So this is really good. I like companies that will consider this, and I will be honest with you, 80% of the companies do not. 80% of the companies do not consider how much return on investment they're getting from every course that they create. And that is a potential problem, because you spend money to build that course and you spend money to put your employees through it. You should be knowing what you're getting for that. But the ROI can be measured in lots of different ways. So one of the ways that it can be measured is we have a client that has warehouses, and they've got lots of equipment moving around in those warehouses, and the potential for safety issues inside that is very large if people are not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in the correct order and procedure. And so you can take the year before that training was implemented and look at how many safety incidents you had. And then you can take that same group of people after the training for a year, and you can see, okay, was there a measurable decrease in safety incidents? And you can do that with anything. So each safety incident is going to cost X amount of dollars, and the company would have to assign a dollar value to those safety incidents. But that number times the dollar value, the number of safety incidents times the dollar value, will give you an ROI on that course. The same thing goes for compliance training. Like let's say like sexual harassment training is a big one. How many incidents of sexual harassment were reported the year before? How many are reported the year after? And obviously those settlements are pretty large. And so that ROI can be calculated pretty easily. You can do it for sales. If the salesmen are taking the training before, how much product did they sell, or whatever your measurement is for those salesmen, and then after the training, was that number different? And so we're very good at helping people come up with these types of numbers, but it's going to be different for every course and every company. But you can measure. Every course is absolutely measurable.
Fantastic. Do you find particular industries are more likely to use an LMS versus, or flagship LMS? Is it more healthcare? Is it more finance, or is it, construction?
Yeah, great question. No, so our platform is agnostic of the industry. We can handle anything. And so we have like the Pennsylvania Teachers Union, the Maryland State Teachers Union. Both of those are our clients. They're nonprofit organizations, and they have, 100,000 members that they put through for all kinds of different training on their platforms, each of them, Pennsylvania, for example. But we also have manufacturing companies. And the manufacturing companies are kind of interesting because they have resellers of their products. So they bring the resellers in so that they know how to pitch the products, maintain the products, install the products, do those kinds of things. But we can do that for, one of our clients is Junior Achievement. And so Junior Achievement is an organization that teaches elementary, middle, and high school kids about entrepreneurship, about budgeting, finance, those kinds of business-related courses. So, very different also there. We do have a healthcare organization. Johns Hopkins University has a pediatric pandemic network where they have a network of hospitals. So we can do everything. And the beautiful part of this is that's the part I really like about the job, because I get to learn a little bit about all these different industries that I would otherwise have never had any experience with. So that's kind of fun. I guess it's sort of kind of like your job, being able to talk with different people and learn a little bit about what they do. Really broadens your view on the world and society.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I created the show, right? Was because I wasn't necessarily great at one thing, but I was curious enough about a lot of things. So, it got to the point where it was better to, I couldn't create a cooking show, so to speak, right? Because it's like, listen, man, I'm the stovetop stuffer king, right? You know what I mean? So, but for all intents and purposes, like, we're very similar in that regard, where it's like, listen, what fascinates me is the process. What fascinates me is how something works, irrespective of any particular industry. I love watching like the food that built America, or the roads that built America, or engineering. I've watched engineering disasters, not because people died, obviously, those are horrible things, but what caused it to go wrong and what was the fix from it, right? So those are the things that you get a chance, in your journey of fascination and curiosity, to be able to actually put pen to paper, so to speak, and then put thought to process. So, I definitely know exactly where you're coming from that. I always ask this of every guest, where can people find Christopher Dundee and Flagship LMS? And I truly believe a half an hour doesn't encompass exactly everything that you do.
Well, I appreciate that. I would love, so first of all, flagshiplms.com is our website. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a schedule a call with us. It's a free call. And genuinely, I want to talk to you regardless of what size your organization is, because I'm interested in how you solve your training dilemmas. And everybody's got them, and everybody has a different approach to it. And I always learn something from talking to people. So I definitely want to hear from you, but there is no obligation to the call. I'm not going to pitch you on the product. I just want to talk to you about your training. And if you've got questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you'd like some feedback on how you're doing, and what would I do differently, I'd be happy to sit down and listen and do what I can to help you. But that to me is the greatest thing in the world. And we'll have a short conversation. And if you'd like to pursue something with us, that would be great. But if you don't, then I got the information that I was really looking for, and I hope you get a little bit from me as well.
I think in the competitive nature of business, online training, tutorials, and talent needed, I think that's, obviously, I'm sure that people who talk to you revisit back later on, because it's very competitive out there. And I just have to ask briefly, how big is your staff? Like, how large of a staff do you have?
We have 13. There's just 13 of us.
Beautiful.
And so with 13, and we have the capacity because it is very personalized, but we also have the ability, once your learning management system is running smoothly, people aren't building courses every single day. Right. So once your system is running smoothly, it's running smoothly. And it is much like your refrigerator. You don't think about it. It's just there doing its job.
Right.
And so we're really good at setting up your refrigerator. And and we'll keep it humming along. We're the Maytag repair guy. We just
Nice.
kind of sit around twiddling our thumbs till you need us.
Well, that's wonderful, man. I'll tell you one thing: you don't notice until it goes bad, right? And then, oh man, those things are oof.
Yeah.
They're a pain in the tail when they do. So Christopher Dundee,
Right,
it's always a pleasure with Flagship LMS to be on the show and the Randomness of Nothing podcast. And I definitely took away a very engaging experience. And I'm honored that you carved out time on your busy schedule.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me talk with you, Rashad.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.